The New York Times is trying to rebrand what it means to be a stay-at-home mom in order to make it more palatable for girl boss, ambitious feminist women who are now starting to question, in much the same way I have, the entire narrative and the premise of being a girl boss and working a big corporate career and whether or not it's actually worth it in the end. So this is a piece that was published last week titled From Girl Boss to No Boss. It's by Izzy Lepowski, and she went to NYU, so pretty standard journalist credentials there. A lot of you'll notice a lot of journalists come from like the same 3 or 4 journalism schools. But nothing too notable about her. But she dives into this piece talking about a woman who kind of settled down at the age of 40, got engaged, had a baby, and decided that she didn't want more childcare. She wanted more time with her child. And I think that's really interesting because whenever you hear conversations come up about the calls for more affordable childcare and access to childcare, the conversation is never about spending time with the child. It's always about the cost and how much it is and why it's become so prohibitively expensive. And I think this is a really subtle point, but it's important because the idea isn't to be able to afford childcare necessarily. It's to spend time with the child. It's supposed to raise your kid when they're in their infancy and they're young and they're just growing. So it shows the priority there isn't the priority we have now within, the feminist narrative is to offload and outsource childcare to strangers, and the cost of that is prohibitively expensive. When in the reality, what moms actually want is they just want to have permission to spend more time with their kids. And right now, professional women feel like they'll be penalized and punished if they step away from their careers to do this, to spend more time with their kids and take care of them. She talks about after a life spent leaning in, she decided for now there might be other things worth leaning into. Shocking. So she's now a part-time consultant and stay-at-home mother. This is something I keep saying and I'll continue to say. You don't need to work a 9-to-5. Women don't need to work 9-to-5 jobs. We have this model of work that is outdated and soon to be obsolete. And this paradigm that we've created in our heads where the only social value we have as women is to generate economic value by having a career and a corporate title and working a 9-to-5 job. And we've boxed ourselves into this, the confines of what we think a job should be, when in reality, we have the capacity to work, earn an income, be at home, take care of the house, take care of the family, raise your kids, without really sacrificing too much of a career. There's always going to be trade-offs, but it's nothing like the trade-off of having to outsource raising your child to a stranger so you can go slave away for a corporate master for, 40, 50 hours a week. Okay, so this goes on to say, an emerging slice of women who are shifting away from full throttle careers defy characterization. I don't know why we have to characterize. Why does everything have to be categorized? Why can't we just be? Why can't we just be? Like, why does everything have to have some sort of label or catchy like headline or tagline? Like, they're moms. They're moms realizing they want to be moms, and you don't need a category for that. Anyways. So these are women of the girl boss era who have MBAs and legal degrees to match. They've read Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. They've stood on the shoulders of the second wave feminists who fought for their right to work. Okay, I'm getting really tired of this trope, and we have to call attention to it. When you say they've stood on the shoulders of the second wave feminists who fought for their right to work, this is implying that every woman who preceded second wave feminism wasn't allowed to work, and we all know that was not true. If you say this and you continue to put out this narrative, you're essentially whitewashing history. Like, did Florence Nightingale not exist? Did Marie Curie not exist? There's countless stories of women throughout history who have had amazing accomplishments, done wonderful things. Women have worked. Sure, there haven't been many. And it's not because, in some ways, yeah, sure, there were some career fields where they weren't allowed. But culturally, it just wasn't acceptable. So, of course, there was a minority. Of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was, one of the only, I don't remember if she's the only woman, but like one of the only women in her law school class, because at that time, it just wasn't culturally common for women to go to law school. And it's not that they couldn't go to law school, because if they couldn't go to law school, Ruth Bader Ginsburg would have never gone to law school. So, this whole idea that like no women were able to work before second wave feminism was around, and second wave feminists were some sort of savior that allowed women and gave them permission to work, is just absurd. And it's reductionist, because it reduces all the amazing accomplishments of women preceding that period. But I digress. 60 years on from that fight, they are also beginning to wonder whether all that career pressure they've been under was another way of forcing them into a box. Ah, yeah. Okay. Now we're starting to get somewhere. So, yeah, the rat race is a box. It's a trap. It's a prison. We didn't actually get anything out of it. Again, the idea that we've traded cooking nutritious foods for processed foods because we're too busy, outsourcing childcare and raising children to strangers because we have to work, creature comforts and quality of life. I always look at like New York City as a paragon of this, because I don't understand why anyone in their right mind would live in New York City. It's disgusting. There's garbage everywhere. The apartments are terrible. They're small. You're paying an arm and a leg and probably your kidney to be able to live in those. And there's just no quality of life. So it's like, why are we doing this to ourselves in order to, work a $60,000 a year job at Vogue to climb a corporate ladder that you might not even be successful in order to barely afford to eat ramen in a terrible apartment. And then, you find yourself a few years down the road unable to afford to have kids and start a family, and the pressure of having to outsource childcare and daycare and all that kind of stuff. Like, why have we put ourselves into this box? And I say ourselves because everyone blames the patriarchy, but no one, there's no patriarchy in this, right? They are also beginning to wonder whether all that career pressure they've been under was another way of forcing them into a box. Like, who put women into this box? Who forced women to go take crappy jobs with low pay in dead-end careers, living in big cities where they have minimal purchasing power and feel under pressure to outsource, daycare? Like, who put them into that box? And it's not the patriarchy. And do you see the contradiction? So it's like in the preceding paragraph, it's like, okay, second wave feminists fought for the right of women to go work. So it's like the assumption is women were not allowed to work. So something was keeping them outside the workforce. So patriarchy was men were keeping women and prohibiting them from working. Second wave feminism came around, saved them. And then they put women into a box. Yet we blame patriarchy for putting us in that same box. It's just the paradox here is so absurd. Like, you can't be liberated from the patriarchy and then and be allowed to work, but then simultaneously imprisoned in it because of your career. Like just the paradox there is insane. But okay. So to hear these women tell it, leaving their jobs, whether for motherhood, starting their own businesses, or otherwise, isn't some sign that they fell off a broken ladder. It's a power move, and here is the rebrand. Yeah. There's like everything in women's circles. You can tell this is written by a woman for women, because everything in women's circles has to be validated, and it has to be some sort of it has to have an empowering message. Like, you can't just step away from your career because you're dissatisfied with it. You have to have a justifiable reason for it. And, I went through this too, right? Like, I left my career in 2019. I used to be a defense contractor, worked in Washington, D.C., was working up this career, corporate career ladder path, if you will. And for the last, 5 or 6 years, I've kind of been bullshitting my way, trying to talk myself up to be more successful than I was, and, doing all these things and making it seem like I was being successful when in reality, I've just kind of settled onto the realization, like, I like thinking and reading and learning, and I'm a good writer, and maybe I'm good at communicating thoughts like this. I don't know. But I like learning and thinking, and if I can find a way to make money to do this, then I'll do it. If people ask why I do it, I tell them I'm a writer. But I don't really have a career identity anymore. And I've kind of given up on that and let that go because I'm frankly exhausted by trying to talk myself up all the time and make myself feel better. And I've realized too, I was doing all of that for the approval of others, and specifically other women. Because this is how girl culture works. We're competing against ourselves. Men don't care. Men don't. They don't care. If you can do what you can say you can do, that I think, at least from a business perspective, I think that's more important than what your title is. Maybe in some jobs, your title matters to some degree. But for a lot, it's just, if you say you can help me get X return on ad spend, can you do that? Like that's what dudes want to know. Whereas women, we're so beholden to titles and, ornamentation and all of these accolades to make ourselves feel better. And I think maybe it's not a gendered thing. I don't know. But like, I think of women who like join boards and volunteer organizations, and they don't always do it to serve other people. They do it for the accolades that serve themselves. There's a couple women that come to mind from my hometown who were like that. But it's not all women, but just this idea that every action you take in your life, you have to have some sort of like, has to be empowering. Like this is a power move, and I don't why. Some sign that they fell off a broken ladder, like just everything that's written here, like women need validation. They need validation, and the validation I don't think is coming from men. It's not coming from the patriarchy, because why would it? If the patriarchy is oppressive, why would they seek validation from the patriarchy? The validation they're seeking is and permission. The validation they're seeking and the permission they're looking for to leave their jobs and admit that the corporate life wasn't worth it, they're looking from other women for that. And that's why it needs to be framed as something powerful. So here, they talk about the power pause, which is a concept created by this woman named Neha Rush. I pulled up her LinkedIn just to, tap into who she is. She went to Stanford. Looks like she wrote a book about the power pause. Otherwise, I think she's probably like most people. She's a brand. Her background's in branding and brand marketing. So I think she's probably like most women, just kind of burned out, and using her branding skills came up with a new way to frame tapping out of the workforce and retreating to a more traditional, satisfying, fulfilling role, being at home. And she talks about she had an MBA from Stanford, and after a decade-long career as a brand strategist, when she left her job after the birth of her second child and found herself without her job title, she suddenly felt naked and counted out. And this is, again, kind of what I was saying before. It's like women use job titles, and maybe men do too. I don't know. If you're a dude and you can relate, like drop a comment and let me know, because I obviously I'm not a dude, so I don't know. I'm projecting on how I think you interpret careers and titles, but I know for women, there's a lot of emphasis in having a title and having the credentials and the accolades that come with it, because you're getting validation and respect from the female community. And that's what women are they're looking for. They're looking for that. Okay, the people asking these questions assume she was regressing into some 1950s June Cleaver stereotype, sitting at home baking cookies. First, why is this a bad thing? Why is baking cookies a bad thing? I do that all the time. I like I said, I'm a writer, so I write. I'm now creating content on YouTube, but I create things and I read, and I have a lot of flexibility and fluidity throughout my day. So there's days where I feel like baking cookies. Honestly, if I wanted to right now, I have chocolate chips in the kitchen. I could go bake some cookies. I'd be happy to. I love it. So I don't know why this is seen as a regression. Why the 1950s June Cleaver stereotype, sitting at home baking cookies, is a regression. Cookies are delicious. Your family loves them. It's not like too taxing or demanding. You can do other things while you're baking cookies. You can do client work or read a book or whatever. And no one is forcing you to do this. Like, no one's holding a gun to your head and forcing you to bake cookies. Whereas there is actual punishment at your job. Like, if you don't show up, you're going to get fired. If you don't perform the right way, you're going to get fired. Maybe a man might divorce you for baking cookies. I don't know, though. That kind of seems silly to me. So anyways, but this actually brings me to the point about the fisherman's parable, which I don't know if you've heard it. If you have, sorry, I'm about to rehash it, but I want to read it for you because this is just a gem. So it goes like this. An American investment banker was at the pier of a small coastal Mexican village when a small boat, which is one fisherman, docked. Inside the small boat were several large yellowfin tuna. The American complimented the Mexican on the quality of his fish and asked how long it took to catch them. The Mexican replied, only a little while. The American then asked, why didn't he stay out longer and catch more fish? The Mexican said he had enough to support his family's immediate needs. The American then asked, but what do you do with the rest of your time? The Mexican fisherman said, I sleep late, fish a little, play with my children, take siestas with my wife Maria, and stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my amigos. I have a full and busy life. The American scoffed. I have an MBA from Harvard and can help you, he said. You should spend more time fishing with the proceeds, buy a bigger boat. With the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could buy several boats, and eventually you would have a fleet of fishing boats. Instead of selling your catch to a middleman, you could sell directly to the processor, eventually opening up your own cannery. You could control the product, processing, and distribution, he said. Of course, you would need to leave the small coastal fishing village and move to Mexico City, then Los Angeles, and eventually to New York City, where you will run your expanding enterprise. The Mexican fisherman asked, but how long will all this take? To which the American replied, 15 to 20 years or so. But then what? Asked the Mexican. The American laughed and said, that's the best part. When the time was right, you would announce an IPO and sell your company stock to the public and become very rich. You would make millions. Millions? Then what? The American said. Then you could retire, move to a small coastal fishing village where you could sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take siestas with your wife, and stroll to the village in the evenings where you could sip wine and play guitar with your amigos. So this is a fantastic, I love this parable because it's basically kind of circumventing what this dude was already doing. So, and this is what I think we've done. I think this is what we've done with our lives. We work hard so we can retire, and then what? And then what comes after retirement? Then you do all the things that you didn't get to do because you were so busy working. So why not cut back a little? Why not, pull the plug on your career for a little bit, take a mini retirement, and focus on your family. You'll never get this time back. You'll never get this time back. You won't be in the health you're in now, assuming you're watching this and you're younger, 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever. But you're not in your retirement. So you're not going to get this time back. So why not? Why not prioritize this? Why do we have this narrative in our heads where we have to wait until retirement, where we have to wait to build something in order to live our lives? And I'm guilty of this too, right? Like, I think we all are, where you think you have to like hit some milestone professionally before you're allowed to do something different or do something with less effort. And I think that's completely wrong. And so like, this is what this June Cleaver stereotype, I think, is what a lot of women secretly aspire to, but they don't want to admit it. Like, everyone wants to leave their corporate. I don't know if you want to stay in your corporate 9 to 5, God bless you. I think the vast majority of people would happily trade their corporate 9 to 5 and stay at home and bake cookies. If the finances allowed them to. I think the vast majority of women would really kind of prefer that, and so this is that parable. It's, why are you going to work 15, 20 years to build an empire to achieve what you already have? And so I think we have to change the narrative. It's not a regression. I think this, like, staying at home, raising your kids, managing your household, baking cookies is what's desirable. And I don't think we should be working 50, 60 years so that by the time you're retired, you can finally enjoy those things. Because at that point, you're going to have missed out on quite a bit. Okay. So they talk about how after the pandemic, these women had access to freelance gigs and remote work options that blurred the once stark lines between work and home. So this woman wrote The Power Pause to redefine this transitional period in women's lives. And I think the pandemic was massively disruptive. Not just because like it shut down the global economy, but because it permanently redefined the nature of work, especially for office workers and people in white collar jobs and knowledge jobs, because all of this pre-existed the pandemic, right? Like Upwork and Fiverr and freelance platforms, those all existed. You could anyone could freelance. You could go find clients on, LinkedIn, manage them in an Airtable or whatever CRM you want to, like you could do all that. All those tools existed. It just wasn't culturally permissible. And then COVID happened and things started to change. People lost jobs. People transitioned to gig work or remote work and freelance work. And suddenly the aperture opened up and career women, one could see how much their quality of life had improved by being home and not having to commute to an office. And then obviously the ability to remote work meant remote delivery, which meant you could start taking freelance clients and doing that kind of work. Whereas before the culture hadn't quite caught up to the technology to make it possible for people to do that. Okay, so this talks about how this woman chose the term power pause. She says, at a moment when she saw motherhood being politicized and the tradwives of TikTok glamorizing retrograde gender roles, the last thing she wanted was to play into old tropes. Tradwife is a hashtag, Ms. Roosh said. It is not a reflection of the majority of American women. I don't really understand the tradwife trend. I think it's being blown out of proportion. Like everyone, there was that piece about the ballerina farm that Hannah Neeleman was the queen of the tradwives. She herself denied and rejected that categorization. Again, going to the beginning of this whole essay talking about categorizing, like why do we need to categorize people? But Hannah Neeleman rejected it. The left and feminist journalist who wrote that piece applied it to her anyways, and now she's like the queen of the tradwives. But she raises a family and runs a business, so. That's not a June Cleaver. There's nothing June Cleaver about that. So I guess like I was saying before, this kind of makes professional women feel better about, like, power pause is a term that makes professional women feel better about themselves. Okay. It's designed to give women their agency back. So this is my question. Who took away their agency in the first place? There's this assumption that from feminist women that they have no rights, that they've lost their agency, that they don't have freedom. But who took all that away? Who took all that away? The government didn't. Men didn't. So who took it away? Other women. I think, in all honesty, the patriarchy wears Prada. And it's been diverted and deflected against men because they're the scapegoat and the enemy that is easy for women to rally around. But in reality, women are oppressing other women. Women are denying other women the right to be mothers and be stay-at-home moms and raise their families. And they're the ones who are denying dignity to other women. No man, at least to my knowledge, no man has stripped mothers of their dignity. If anything, men venerate women for wanting to be mothers. They celebrate that. It's other women who put women down for wanting to be mothers. And now you have to come up with these bullshit terms to make it acceptable to the cultural elite on the coast, the coastal elite, who are saying, hey, we don't want to work these jobs anymore. And, they want to take a power pause. Okay. The power pause is itself a rebrand of an old concept. No kidding. It has always been the case that women moved in and out of the workforce as their family needs demanded or made possible. But Ms. Greco, who is a stay-at-home mom herself, said the pandemic changed work and to make it possible for women to combine career interests and family in a way that was harder before we had Zoom. Okay, again, it didn't make it possible. It made it more culturally acceptable. It's as if like people think video conferencing didn't exist before Zoom. Like Skype existed, FaceTime existed, WhatsApp has existed for years. I mean, I guess like everyone uses Zoom. Now, I honestly would love to know where Zoom comes from because I had access to all these tools before the pandemic. I don't know about you, but I did. So it always confused me when people were like, Zoom. Skype was a thing for a really long time, guys. And so, yeah, there were always ways to communicate. It's just it wasn't culturally acceptable, and now it is. But again, it's not yet culturally acceptable for women to stay at home and be stay-at-home moms, or, part-time freelance and then also raising kids. So you need this rebrand to validate women and help them kind of move along that path. Okay. In 2021, researchers recorded the highest percentage of women leaders leaving their companies in years. Not all of them were leaving the workforce entirely, but they were often seeking more flexibility than their employers could provide. This is really telling because it's not even just mothers who want flexibility, it's just in general. There's a lot of rigidity to 9-to-5 jobs that are frankly intolerable. Sitting in a corporate office, especially if you have nothing to do, like sitting in a corporate office for, 8 hours a day, twiddling your thumbs, pretending to work, pretending to look busy, taking innumerable coffee breaks because you're so bored. It's imprisoning. I hated it. I felt like I was in prison every single day. And I was voluntarily going just for the paycheck. And yeah, I think this is the case for a lot of people, not just moms and not just women. I think people want more flexibility and they want the freedom, to be able to work in a way that suits them. And it's not even just like choosing when to work, it's like how to work, choosing spaces that make sense. I work from home. I've worked from coffee shops a lot. I've worked from co-working spaces. I love all of that, and I hate having to report to an employer's office. So everyone's different, needs a different space to work from. The flexibility is not just, it's not just moms. Okay. What is this one? Is about a woman who worked remote from her home in Kentucky, and she set work-life boundaries that her colleagues respected. And she had it all. She had the kids, she had the flexible job, but she says she felt she didn't want it. Among other things, the periodic travel her job required now seemed totally unappealing. So many of us are told what being successful is. We never really thought about whether we want that or not, she said. That's interesting. I think this is really important. Feminists have told us, like, to go to school and to get these jobs, and we never thought for ourselves whether or not we wanted those things in the first place. And again, this gets back to the question of agency. Okay, we should have agency over our lives to make choices about what we want. But we can't do that. Women are constantly being told what to want by other women, And so who's depriving us of agency? Other women. We're told we're not supposed to want to work from home, that it is a regression, that we're denying ourselves and depriving ourselves of our potential. That if we don't have a job title, we won't be respected, we won't have an identity, we won't socially exist, we won't have value. If we're not earning money on par with a man, we have nothing to offer. And all of these narratives, we're told to accept these things, but we're not empowered to think for ourselves and ask, like, is this something I actually want? Like, do you actually want to work in a 9-to-5 office? I don't think many people do. I think many people are lying to themselves. I mean, maybe you like the hustle of working in an office, but I had my career. I was in DC for about 6 years, and I can't imagine spending decades commuting on the metro every day, going to an office, like just the same thing over and over. It's like Groundhog Day. You're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And yeah, I mean, I guess like being at home isn't too much different, but it's a game you're choosing to play. You're choosing to raise your children. You're choosing to take care of your home. You're choosing to put your family first, and that's something you're building and creating. You're not choosing to play your employer's game. Like, they're choosing, they're setting the rules, they're telling you what to do. So for me, that's the distinction. Okay. Women making these moves also often grapple with what they owe to the women they leave behind. Oh my gosh. Why is this? Okay. Why is this a thing? Why do women feel guilty about leaving other women behind? So if I wrote here, if women have agency, why do they owe anything to one another? And who says anyone's being left behind, right? Like, we're talking about choice here. We're talking about agency. We're talking about the freedom to question whether or not you want what comes from the careers that you've chosen. So who's to say that you're leaving someone behind? maybe they want to work that job. Maybe that's their dream. Maybe let them do their thing. You're not leaving anyone behind. Of course, there's the racial dynamic to this, that this is true for women of color. So it's the assumption, there's a white guilt assumption here that white women are leaving women of color behind. No, I mean, we're the product of our choices. Everyone has agency to make choices in our lives, and we're making choices every single day. So you make one choice, and that's how your life turns out. I made choices. My life has turned out the way it has because of my choices. Neither good nor bad necessarily, but they're choices, and you have to be accountable to them. And the assumption that you're leaving a woman behind, one, you're not accountable to them because they're not accountable to you. And two, again, they have agency to make choice in their lives, and that has nothing to do with you. Okay. Other women like Maria Weaver struggle with the loss of identity that comes with such a major career change. And I think this is really important. And the woman who came up with the power pause term mentioned this earlier in the article. But women have ascribed their identities to their careers, right? And so you have your identity, like, I'm not just Amanda Claypool, right? Like, in today's feminist world, I'm Amanda Claypool. I have a LinkedIn profile. I have to show my qualifications and my credentials and validate myself for the marketplace. I can't just exist as Amanda Claypool. I can't just have my own personhood. I have to fit all of these professional criteria in order to be taken seriously, to have social value, to have economic value, and to matter, to exist, basically. To exist outside the home, I need to exist outside of the home from society's perspective, not physically exist, but socially exist outside the home. I need to have all of these things. And so and this is why I think women are looking for permission, especially these, girl boss women who are looking for permission to leave their careers. It's because they would forfeit the identity that basically is their key to social existence. Without your corporate identity, without your professional identity, you do not exist in society. You do not matter. You have absolutely nothing to offer. That's why girl bosses exist, right? You can't just, you don't see any stay-at-home moms going to happy hours and talking about how they're stay-at-home moms. They would get laughed out of the room. No one would want them. I mean, just imagine in New York City, there's a happy hour for stay-at-home moms. I can't even imagine it, right? Because that just doesn't happen. You would lose your identity. And so I think this is a big thing women are grappling with. So this is why I do give the New York Times some credit here. As much as this is absurd to rebrand being a flexible stay-at-home mom, living a life that aligns with whatever season of life you're in, raising children, whatever. The fact that we have to rebrand that to make it palatable and socially acceptable is just humorous to me. But this really highlights why, because women are seeking validation from other women, and they fear losing not just their promotional potential and their career, but their identity and their social value that is ascribed with that career. Okay. The truth is, many of the women pursuing this path still want to work. They just want to do it in a way that works for them. There's no shame in that. And men do too. This isn't just women. Men do too. I think we all just want to work in a way that aligns with our lives, and we want to get out of this treadmill, this 9-to-5 treadmill, working in a rat race that isn't set up to help us win. There's no part of subsisting on a one income from a single W-2 employer and paying taxes and barely, your wage barely keeping up with inflation, and having to job hop just to get, promotions and raises and all that kind of stuff. Nothing about that is appealing. And again, maybe if you enjoy it, fine. But that's why people are so drawn to, being stay at home and entrepreneurs and freelancing, because you get the freedom that the 9-to-5 doesn't get you. So I applaud the New York Times for finally bringing attention to this. I don't think we need a rebrand of being a stay-at-home mom. I think we just need to let stay-at-home moms be stay-at-home moms and celebrate them for that. But if this is a means to that end, then hopefully this is the path and a step in the right direction. If you like this commentary and you like this video, I'd love it if you would subscribe, and definitely let me know your thoughts on this. And especially if you're a woman watching this, if you resonate with anything I had to say, or if you find the need to seek validation from other women, or just what I said about agency and that kind of stuff. If you're maybe not consciously, but subconsciously looking for confirmation from the woman sphere that whatever moves you're making in your career are acceptable. If any of this resonates with you, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. So yeah, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.